welcome back to the program. Welcome to our panel this morning. I'm joined by Malcolm Farr, Political Editor with news.com.au. Very good morning to you. And Troy Bramston, Senior Writer at the Australian newspaper. Thank you both for joining us. Can I just pick up on the Medevac debate? So a federal court ruling this week has really sharpened the focus on it all. But the story today in the Age newspaper is quite interesting as well. It breaks down some numbers on this. I haven't been able to confirm them independently, Malcolm, but they suggest the medical panel, the doctors that sit on a panel overseeing the whole thing, have only allowed in 2 people against the wishes of the government, where the government has said no, they shouldn't be allowed in. The medical panel has said yes to most of those, but 2 they've allowed to come in. What do you think this says about how this system has operated over the last 4 months?
Well, it reveals the checks and balances within the system. Peter Dutton would like us to think that just, well, as he put it, any random GP can give these people a tick to come here, when that's simply not so. There are a number of stages that have to be gone through.
It starts with the GPs, then the department and the minister get a chance to say yes or no. Then you have the medical panel,
which the government has appointed, by the way. And after all that, the minister still has the right to ban people coming here on the grounds of character, national security, etc. Also, if they are allowed to come here, they can be held in detention. So it's not as if they come here and suddenly are up in Surfers Paradise in a beer garden. They can be held in detention.
That doesn't generally happen with any medical... Well, not for long anyway, with medical transfers.
No.
But you're right, he has the power to do that.
Yes. So, look, there seems to be an exaggeration of the risks. And there are risks, of course, because people will take advantage of any loophole. But the government seems to be exaggerating those risks as it takes on the ALP in a legislative battle it hopes to win by claiming it has a mandate.
Look, Troy, and Paul Kelly's point is a fair one, that fundamentally the principle that the government of the day isn't deciding who comes into the country, isn't controlling absolutely our borders, is a problem. But in practice, I think he's also right to say these doctors on the panel have been fairly restrained in how they've used this authority.
Yeah, look, I think that's the right way to look at it, David. I think we would be mistaken to think that this was not a significant change to the border protection regime that's been in place for a number of years now. But there are these checks and balances in the system that's been introduced with these amendments, as Malcolm mentioned. But it's also worth pointing out, as you've done in your interview this morning, that there's only been 31 transfers in total in the past 4 months. So the government's claims that this would open the floodgates...
the government's waved through.
Yeah, that's right. And this claim that this would open the floodgates and the border protection regime would be fundamentally challenged and weakened, I mean, that just hasn't come to pass. I think the government did over-egg this issue, and you can understand why, though. This was in the months leading up to an election. They wanted to sharpen the divide on border protection with Labor, but I think they wildly exaggerated what would happen, and we've seen that borne out by these figures that have been in the media today.
So the warnings now from the government, Troy, that this federal court ruling means the 2 doctors in Australia don't have to consult the patient at all in Nauru before recommending a transfer. How much weight should be given to these warnings from the government now that this significantly weakens the whole system further?
Yeah, well, this is another element. Of course, this has come out of the federal court decision this week. And on face value, it looks strange. It looks strange that a doctor cannot actually look at a patient and make a recommendation to the medical panel. So that is another possible change to this system that we are not yet to see the impact of. But I think the government needs to be a little bit careful here, again, in not over-egging the case. But I don't think they'll take my advice or anyone else's, really. I mean, they really want this sharp divide with Labor. They want to prosecute it strongly, and I think this will become another significant legislative battle when Parliament goes back.
All right, look, Malcolm, they're not obviously going as far as they did last time. Scott Morrison's not going to Christmas Island this time to
No, he's already spent his $180 million press conference.
But, it clearly wants a debate over repealing these laws, and debates on border protection the coalition's usually happy to have. They relish these sort of fights. I don't get the sense, though, that Labor is getting wobbly on this at all, though. They seem pretty happy in defending these Medevac laws. Is that the sense you get?
Yes, I mean, you're quite right. Normally, a day spent talking about border protection is a day that Labor is lost to Labor. But I think in this case, there's a certain amount of justification for these amendments to the existing legislation. And also, you've got to remember, it was a bit of a triumph for Labor. It was an embarrassment for the government. So Labor wouldn't want to, tend to the government's ego by going back wrong. Yeah.
And we've got to remember too, there are roughly 1,000 people who have been brought in under medical transfers, not the Medevac, that's only 31, but 1,000 have been brought in by the government under its watch. A lot of them they've resisted, they've fought against in the courts, but that's a hell of a lot. More, in fact, than remain now on Nauru and Manus Island are here in Australia and presumably here indefinitely. They're not given permanent status at all, but they're here on medical transfers or as a child or a family member of someone who's been brought in because they're sick, and they're here.
Well, we do have obligations to these people if they are under our control. We have obligations to maintain their health.